in Gaza as civilians try to get aid going to make it onto Israeli media today. There is a debate emerging in Israel over the reporting or lack thereof of the humanitarian crisis in Gaza.
How bad do y'all want to be on the wrong side of history?
Israeli journalist Emmanuel Elbaz Phelps, who's one of those arguing for more reporting of this. And I asked her first whether today's event of the overturned trucks is likely to make it onto the agenda.
This kind of story would have a very little attention, also because today Prime Minister is pushing for a full plan to occupy Gaza, and so that is the discussion. And this kind of story is getting very little, if not at all, attention.
Somebody should have pushed Trump off the roof yesterday.
The humanitarian situation, I mean, it's on all the front pages of newspapers across the world. Lots of images coming through, even though reporters aren't allowed into Gaza. Is much of that being reported on in Israel, the humanitarian catastrophe unfolding in Gaza?
It is talked about, and for the last 2 weeks we also have been seeing in mainstream media the pictures of children and the hunger and the dire situation of Gaza. But it is quite a new development because it's talked about. The pictures, the human pictures of the Gaza Strip have not been very shown broadly during the war. I have to say that the pictures of Eviatar David and Romboslavsky, the two hostages held by Hamas in Gaza, that we've seen very, very skinny and suffering, that has been shocking to Israelis, and that's take over the conversation once again.
Censorship is no excuse. You guys have the internet. You can see what everyone's been saying. You've been intentionally ignoring it from our perspective.
Recently, where you clashed with other people on the program about how much should be shown from Gaza. Do you want to tell us what happened?
It's a TV show on one of the main channels in Israel, Channel 13, where I sit as a contributor every week. And we were talking about the tolls of the war, the hostages still being held, and the agony of the families. And we were talking about the soldiers that are falling during the war in Gaza. And then the discussion was kind of moving on. And I thought it was also imperative that we talk about the Palestinian victims and we just acknowledge them at least. And people around the table were not really interested in this talk. And it was pretty much representative of the public opinion in Israel, because we know from polls that only around 35% of the population would say that they are interested in the humanitarian situation in Gaza. But
well, a third of you can do something about it.
35% is not that little. It needs its voice on mainstream media, right, and not to be ignored.
So
Stop
they
the Ghazala cost.
You down, didn't they? And you persisted and came back and said, no, we need to talk about this. And then that sparked a response, and you got a lot of criticism from people, but also people contacted you to say thank you for speaking up on this
Thank
issue.
you for speaking up on this issue.
I did not get criticism. That was amazing. I got criticism during the show, but I got so many messages of support.
I guess you guys have all your trolls
saying,
trolling outward.
I wasn't sure my voice or my opinion was legitimate because I didn't see it on mainstream media. So thank you for that. Now I want to say again, there is coverage of Gaza and there is a talk about Gaza from day one in Israel, but it's either in a Haaretz newspaper or on very specific shows, and it's not across the board.
So you have one non-genocidal newspaper and a few non-genocidal shows.
Some Israeli reservists saying that they don't actually want to serve in Gaza anymore, and they're worried about what they're being asked to do there. And then this week,
should have been worried for years.
That letter to President Trump signed by
600
former
should have run away, help people or something.
Asking Mr. Trump to put pressure on Mr. Netanyahu. Is that sort
of turned on the genociders
coming into the fore in Israel? And do you see that there's a shift that people do want to end this war?
Turned on your fellow genociders.
For months now. What you just said, it's completely the center of the discussion all day long in Israel. And this is something that we need to understand. The Israeli society, and we know that from polls and surveys,
and the war by overthrowing Netanyahu. Overthrowing Netanyahu. He's the one who wants the war.
And
duh.
We can see demonstrations in the street, and as you say,
and work on overthrowing Putin and Trump too.
Officials from the past but also ambassadors from the past,
and they tricked you into doing this.
Ministers of Israel, former prime ministers of Israel. We know that around 70% of the society is asking for the end of the war because the majority of the society is convinced that this is the only way to get the hostages back home.
You're talking about, obviously, the suffering of the hostages, which is
the only way to stop being on the wrong side of history.
What about concern for
and squandering all sympathy for anything your people have been through, doing the same thing to other people?
Many people across the world are beginning to judge Israeli people, the Israelis.
Oh, we're judging you.
For what's happening
Damn straight we're judging you. And the real God is judging you, because the God of Zionism is false and evil. That's proven. There is no God of Zionism. It's a false and evil concept.
There is a discussion when you hear President Trump saying that there is hunger in Gaza and you cannot deny the pictures. When
Trump's causing it, cutting down the aid centers.
Countries are saying that they want to recognize a Palestinian state. So there is a question of how the world is seeing Israel right now. But the war for Israelis, the war is justified because Hamas has attacked.
Well, it's not. For humans, it's not. No, Netanyahu planned that, and the time to defend against that was the 7th of October.
Still in Gaza. So Israelis.
Yeah, and Netanyahu's still in Israel. Netanyahu's still on the planet. Netanyahu, Trump, and Putin are still on the planet. That's not right.
Israeli journalist Emmanuel Elbaz Phelps there.